All right, let's get this meeting started. I guess we'll call to order. What I'd like to do is just, again, we'll just go around the room. Everybody just introduce themselves, state your name and anything else you want, or just your name. Let's start over here.
Drew Stevens. I'm a member of the Planning Board and also an alternate on the Conservation Commission.
Mary Colvard, I'm an alternate on zoning and on the Conservation Commission.
I'm Kristen Lamb. I have lived in town since 2009, and I've been on the Conservation Commission for almost a decade.
Chris Evans, I'm on the planning board, I guess, yeah, currently.
Nice. I'm Dirk Rotenhuis. I was voted in as the chair of this subcommittee, so I'm here. I'm in the front.
Dawn Fertile, so I was the vice chair.
My name's Lauren Chase Rowell. I live up on Stevens Hill Road, and I've been in town for about 44 years. And I worked on the UNH's master plan. That was, that's what I did, is ecological landscape design and restoration. And yeah, it's my own community, so I thought I'd come down and lend a hand.
Thank you. Tell me, I met you up on Stevens Hill. Tell me your name again. I'm sorry.
Lauren, it's Lauren, Lauren.
Lauren, and last name was,
It's hyphenated, it's Chase hyphen Rowell, Rowell.
thank you.
Kevin Bassett, alternate on the zoning board.
And I am Blair Haney. I'm a principal planner with SRPC. I was the person that wrote the grant to get the funding from the HOP program to do the housing master plan chapter update. So I kind of helped get this going, but as you all know, your charge is the whole master plan, but what I'm focused on is the housing piece. So we'll get into all that, but that's who I am.
great. So Blair's the guy that wasn't here last
Yes.
meeting, but is kind of try to pull us together and responsible for the some of the content and what's your sponsor? What are you calling SRPC here? Or,
I mean, we're the grant consultant. Is what we are.
Consultant.
Yes. Yeah.
so you're going to consult us and how to do this.
Yeah. Just try to lead the charge.
Thank you, sir.
Well, we've got a set of minutes that our secretary, Chris, developed, and there was a couple minor edits, I think, but has everybody had a chance to look at them and have any comments or other things relative to them?
Any extras?
Yeah, there's a whole packet up there on the front.
Yeah. If you haven't already, grab a binder and grab a copy of all these documents that Alana was kind enough to make for us. She's gonna get you all tabs and stuff, but I think there's sticky notes up there if you want them for now.
Are the previous minutes in this packet? I don't.
They're not.
No, they're not.
No, I printed out one copy for myself, but
I reviewed them previously, I just
happy to share.
don't have them from me.
I sent them to our group early, like 2 days after the meeting, while
Yep.
my
Yeah.
brain was still remembering. I can't remember what I purpose this morning.
They were very good.
And so I did send them, and
I didn't see them.
Mary, huh?
I didn't see them, but maybe I wasn't on the original chain or thread. Yeah.
So
I
let's,
thought so. So Mary, you did see them, and she gave a couple of my spelling corrections or name corrections.
Yeah.
So I apologize if I messed that up badly.
Well, I was impressed how quickly they came.
I
Yeah.
know.
yeah. Okay, so what do you want to do with the minutes? Should we, I don't think we need to vote on minutes, right? Really isn't a voting board.
Yeah.
Whether we need to accept it, but I would just call if there's any comments or edits, then send them forward, otherwise we'll just.
We make a move to accept them with the corrections, and
Right.
that will be that. We had elected officers, and it set forth some of the basics of what we talked about, and it wasn't anything besides electing the officers. I think that was important.
Yep. Okay, well, we'll just, anyone not accepting these? We'll count it accepted. Since you weren't on that list, here's a copy of those minutes if you want. So let's go over some, I'm gonna follow the agenda that Blair put together, thank you. We've got some data and timelines, when available, preferred themes. We've got some accomplishments and completed items from 2011, the housing chapter. I know last meeting we did look at all of it, just briefly, and I think there was a little bit of homework assignment just to make sure everybody reads it. And we'll talk about some other topics, Nottingham Subcommittee, NSC.
It's the abbreviation I'm gonna use in the future,
Okay.
yeah, for this group.
All right, and then, other business, discuss, options for future meeting dates. I know a number of the people that were here last meeting have conflicts, so we'll probably spend a little bit of time on what works best for people. And then we'll get another meeting time in, so I guess at this point, Blair, I'd probably turn it over to you unless there's other questions we wanna talk about on the agenda. Is there anything that anyone wants to add to this?
I had some questions that hopefully will clarify our work that I had sent to Blair and then I sent to the whole group. As far as, there was a lot in there about affordability and things like that. And I'm just wondering what SRPC or even the state of New Hampshire's expectation is of us in fulfilling some of those statewide concerns.
Yeah, I mean, we're a town, in a county, in a state, so there's only limited things that we can do. This is really focused on the town,
Yeah.
but we wanna make sure that the data is consistent with our neighbors. Very similar communities, very similar makeups, but we wanna make sure we're making sure Nottingham is front and center with our work. So the other questions I think I'm gonna probably have to Blair is maybe just touch on, we've got this housing, but let's kind of just step back a little bit and just, we've got to update this master plan. There are other chapters to this. Could you just maybe step us through what your thinking is as far as an approach to it?
Yeah.
Great.
Obviously, that would have been something I would have probably tried to cover had I been here last time. But being sick, it happens. It's that time of year. So the town of Nottingham has a full master plan that it put together. It keeps being referred to as the 2011, but actually it's a 2012 because that's when it was adopted. But you have 9 chapters. It's all on your town website. If you haven't found it already, I hope you have. And each chapter is its own document, so it makes it easy to just pull what you want and navigate it. The last chapter is the implementation guide, and that's one of the things we're going to go over tonight. So you have essentially 8 master plan chapter topics: housing, natural resources, land use, historic resources, economic trends, transportation, community facilities, and energy. And then you have your implementation guide. So that's what comprises your town's master plan. A master plan, as far as the state is concerned, you have to adopt a master plan if you plan to adopt zoning. So obviously, you've had zoning for a while, but there was a time when you didn't. And a lot of communities, especially smaller rural communities like yourselves, who just didn't have a lot of development or didn't have a lot of staff to do it. You didn't have zoning, you didn't have master plan. But if you wanted a zoning ordinance, you had to have a master plan. And you at the very least had to have a vision and a land use chapter. Everything else is kind of considered a luxury, so to speak. So that was 2012. 2011, the work was done. 2012, it was adopted. over time, as communities get bigger, your issues become more complex within each chapter. So tackling it as a single project, updating the entire master plan, becomes more and more difficult, more time-consuming, more costly. So some towns will tackle it chapter by chapter. As grant dollars become available that are focused on a specific topic, like what we're doing, what I'm doing right now. You're, again, charged with the whole master plan, but I am here as part of a grant contract as a consultant on the housing master plan chapter. It's also considered to be the demographics in housing master plan chapter because this is the chapter that tends to get a little front-loaded with demographics. So population trends, projections, household sizes, different things that are maybe not specific to housing, but they're housing adjacent. And then all the other chapters could benefit from them. So that's sort of the approach we're taking with this, though, again, the focus is on the housing component. The housing dollars were put forth by the legislature a few years ago into the Housing Opportunities Planning Grant, HOP. And there were 2 rounds prior to your round when this community finally applied and got funded. So I'm working on, in some communities like Somersworth, for example, we're now on our 2nd or 3rd round of HOP grant. So some communities are focused more on implementation or crafting new zoning ordinance. You guys are still in that master plan focus phase. There are no real expectations about what comes out of this, only that you produce a housing master plan chapter and ideally adopted at the planning board level. So that's kind of what our sort of highest level goal is here. Again, speaking specifically to me and what I'm charged with. You guys are free to meet anytime you want. I don't need to be there if you want to talk about any of the other chapters or anything like that. You're free to talk about the housing chapter if you want as well. But there's only so much grant dollars for me to be here, so I can't necessarily come every single month if that's the way you choose to meet. Some of my time and resources are to be for this group and the meetings, but a lot of it is to do that behind the scenes, grabbing all the data that you're interested in, if we want to do maps, and then starting some of the analysis and bringing forth ideas. The other piece to this is an outreach and engagement plan. The state has determined that this is an important part to this, and they make you obligate a certain amount of funds towards outreach and engagement. For the purposes of this plan, outreach and engagement is, one, who are you going to outreach to? You're trying to get a little bit deeper into the community, try to find the people that are a little bit harder to pull into meetings, pull into workshops, and bring them in. And then the engagement piece is, okay, great, you got them through the door. Now what? How do we engage with them? What do we do? Because there's many techniques, there's many different ways. For example, you can do a survey. That's easy, that's sort of like, it kind of goes out to them, or they find it on the town website, they go through the survey and they provide their feedback. But then there's more interactive ones, like a community workshop, where we're gonna have stations and we're gonna do different activities at each one to try and get people to think about housing in different ways, and again, pull all that information together and make that part of the plan. So those are just a couple of examples. We have, the ability to tailor that to this community and how you want to do that. But that is a big piece to it. That's part of what I'll be leading the charge on, with other staff too. So that's kind of the high level of what I'm supposed to be doing, and what this housing master plan chapter update is about. Again, I know you all have bigger interests, you have all these other chapters, but that's where I'm at. Is that pretty fair overview? Did that just create more questions than answers, or?
Well, certainly we can take questions. I have one. Is the outreach program just for the housing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Two things. One is, there is a schedule. It was part of the application, and it did show us kind of having more of a kickoff a little bit earlier. We've moved a little bit slower to the planning board had decided to take an all master plan approach rather than just the housing chapter, so they created a subcommittee and charged this group with the whole of the master plan. And then there was the recruitment of getting everybody together. This is an amazing turnout. We had 10 or 11 people volunteer to be on the group. So we're a little bit behind, but we're still fine. We have plenty of time to complete the work. It's going to take about a year. So let's just try and, for my chapter, it's going to take about a year. We're going to be into 2026 a little bit. We will move along. It could potentially get sped up a little bit. It'll just sort of depend on a few things. But for the most part, this is going to take a little while. And part of what I want to focus on in the beginning is the outreach engagement, because it takes time to set those up. And it takes time to do the outreach to get people to know about the events that we're going to do, or the survey that we're going to do, whatever that might be. I had one more thing. All right, go on. So yeah, schedule, a little behind, we're good. Anywhere from 10 to 12 months this project's going to take, but I did want to touch on that, yeah.
Should we, is that lighter lifting? Should we take on other things while we're a group in this year, as far as the overall master plan? Or do you feel like that 1 year is just the housing?
Right, so that question sparked the second thing I wanted to say.
That's a great question. I think that's a great question.
Yeah, Drew is aware of this because him and Dallas worked hard with me to prepare a grant application for PREPA, which is the Piscataqua Region Estuaries.
The grant itself is a different acronym from the actual organization.
Yeah.
So it's like the, environmental something or other, yeah.
So they oversee the Piscataqua region, which does include a small part of Maine, but it's mostly New Hampshire. And we are part of that as part of the Oyster River and the Lamprey River. And the application was for an update to the natural resources inventory maps, a lot of which you can see down the hallway here, and then the natural resources chapter. So to answer your question, if we get this grant and we'll know, they say they're going to let us know by May 2nd, so let's say first week of May. If we do, it dovetails beautifully, of all the chapters in my opinion, with the housing master plan chapter. Because you can kind of look at the areas where you don't want development and the areas where you want development, and you try to find that balance. So if we get that grant, the answer is going to be yes, because we'll be working on the two together, and I'm really hoping that we do. If that doesn't come through, not a big deal. For the housing chapter, again, it's up to you what you want to do. A little bit, maybe with some data, I could help you out with it, but really, I am contracted for a certain thing. So if you want to create subcommittees, or if you want to try to take on something else, because you think it'll benefit you over the long haul, yeah, that's more than fine. But again, that'll just be you guys having to meet, sort of doing your own thing, setting the agendas, and doing the meetings and the documents and stuff. But there is a lot of things if you decide to do that, go through SRPC's website. There's a lot of data that we put out there. And I'll get into that in a little bit, but there's a lot of things that you all can find on your own. There's even a lot of maps that are already out there that you could reference if you decided you wanted to do one of these other chapters. Historical resources, land use, energy, they're not as technical as you might think. Community facilities, I think you even have a community facilities group here. I know Gary Anderson was on it he was a former planning board member that I knew. He was working on something. It might have been as part of your capital improvements program.
Yeah, the CIP, I think, did some of the evaluation of what things are need to be done in this town. But I think the master plan committee can maybe look at some directions on that, because, it's, housing being part of it, but there's also land development, commercial types of housing. There's a lot of considerations to be given other than just, housing.
Yeah, I mean, your economic trends is going to look into your non-residential development, as well as job creation and business development. Housing is going to get into different types of housing, whether it's multifamily or single family, whether it's rent or owner occupied. That is all stuff that I'm going to cover.
Elderly housing too?
Yeah. The state of New Hampshire allows for specific elderly, and I believe it has some carve-outs for veterans. But beyond that, there really isn't much else. You have to be careful with discrimination, Even elderly pushes the envelope a little bit, but they have deemed it a public need and therefore an allowable thing. But
I still
Yeah.
have some questions, I guess, about the grant, and I guess I'm, just to be candid, like worried about inherent bias, because I'm sure the state of New Hampshire is trying to solve issues that the state has by funding these grants. So looking at affordability, demographics, housing stock, like we already didn't necessarily decide that those are things that are important for Nottingham. So I'm a little worried, or can you speak to like the housing opportunity that assumes that Nottingham wants to create a lot of opportunity or opportunity in general. So can you speak to some of that?
what the legislature intended?
The grant, yeah, the grant beyond guiding, I know that there are a lot of real estate agents and places that were lobbying for this HOP funding to happen in the first place. So how do we make sure that our process isn't inherently biased by the needs of New Hampshire in general?
Because we're here to.
I can't wade into that. I mean, that's, this is a grant to look at housing in the community. And through the process of collecting data, of looking at trends, and working with the community, it's gonna start to, tell a story. And then that chapter is gonna try to capture that as much as possible. And there'll be recommendations. If we go back and look at the implementation plan, again, something I want to go over to see where we're at. There's all kinds of recommendations, action items that the last group put forth for the community, and we're going to do something similar. I'm anticipating it to be a little more robust, simply because there's a lot more data that's available. There's a lot more mapping that is available. And again, we're talking about a specific chapter and not, a group of 10 trying to tackle all 9 chapters.
So these actions come from 2011?
Yes,
Ah,
yeah.
I didn't see that.
So that's the housing piece of the larger Chapter 9 implementation guide. Because there were implementation items for each chapter. I just pulled out the housing to isolate it for the sake of this conversation.
So, Mr. Chair, there are other actions for other chapters.
Yes.
Do you have access to those actions?
Yep.
Yeah, they're all on the web, everything's on the website.
All we gotta do is find them. Now I understand, okay.
Yeah,
The very last chapter is the implementation guide, isn't it? That
Yep.
contains
Technically, the
all
last
that?
chapter of the master plan.
Okay,
yeah.
so 10 to
And I would
12
say
months.
that,
Go ahead.
I would say that a lot of them, even though it's in the master plan, action's already been taken. So we do need to sort of update that as a part of this and understand what has been done that falls off that action item list. So that's another part of what we'll need to do.
And what we would want to continue or
Make
pick
that
up to
task
put on
down.
this one?
It's something to do by some date. Yes.
Yeah, so
I understand it.
Sue Mooney, if you all know her, was kind enough to give me 5 years of notes. So I told her I wanted the 2018 stuff when they got back together to look at
That's the
the
best.
entire implementation plan, which included the housing chapter, and she gave me everything. So from 2011, when she was on the original group. I am gonna look, I did ask her if she would like to come in and just kind of walk us through it. Sue served her time as far as I can tell, so she was all set.
Still is.
But she made this available to me, so I will, what we don't figure out here, I'll start going through there, but it's 6 items. It's not, like I said, the breadth and depth of these chapters is not there compared to what I'm seeing nowadays, 14 years later. So.
From other towns.
From other towns, yeah, exactly.
And a lot of these, they have action items and who's responsible for it. So we could just do a poll or ask those people that are now there to find out if those things have been implemented.
Yeah. Yeah, and I even have a document from your counterpart, Ed Veal, who is the former chair. He was the chair up until this last month, and replaced Dirk on the planning board. And he, I gotta go back and find it. He gave me a document that was the entire implementation guide, but the responsible party was the planning board. And so what did they do?
Yeah,
So-
we went through that list for quite a while, like a year, and trying to either tick them off or make action because they had been sitting there dormant for so long.
Yeah.
And I'll look back through my stuff to see if I have what we took action on.
Just as a food for thought, I tell this to everybody nowadays when I work on master plan chapters, actually any kind of document, any kind of planning document. You all work so hard and so tirelessly and selflessly to do the document, and then you're exhausted at the end of it, and then it just sits on a shelf and no one does anything with it, because that's what happens. It always happens. Think about an implementation committee, separate but a part of this group. Maybe you form a subcommittee of this or something like that, but after the housing chapter and other chapters that you might do, think about an implementation committee, people that are charged with focusing on those action items and pushing people, because it's going to be volunteer driven. You have a land use clerk who's part-time, and then you contract with SRPC. And the part of our contract that's related to implementation of these items is minimal. Most of it is plan review and providing staff reports. Some of it is to do zoning changes and changes to your site plan regs and stuff like that. So I will be a part, well, me or whoever it is, the future me, because I'm also the contract planner for your community. So SRPC is contracted by your town to provide what they call circuit riding services, which is essentially a contract planner. So when someone submits a subdivision plan, you all take a look at it, but so does SRPC to look at compliance with regulations and best practices and provide feedback. For engineering stuff, you have another third-party group, a private entity that you contract with that will do stormwater regulations and making sure that the road designs and curves and stuff are all fine. So I'm sort of uniquely qualified to help you all out with your master plan pieces, whether it's this chapter or the natural resource chapter, because I have been here for 3 years, a couple times a month on the planning board. So that was just a little sidebar. Part of that is helping to implement some of these changes, whether they're in the master plan or not, but zoning changes, site plan review, things like that.
Does the grant have a expiration?
It does.
You
but-
mentioned 10 to 12 months, is that sort of when it finishes?
Yeah, it goes a little bit further out than
Okay.
that. But yeah, we planned about, like pretty much
Okay.
11, 12 months. And so we have a little bit of cushion. Not a year, but maybe 6 months, something like that.
Okay.
I'll double check.
So that sets our goal for, like you said, 10, 12 months,
Yep.
what we should try to accomplish, and then the tasks in order to get there.
Is there funding for, or does funding include like marketing, visibility, messaging, and even creating like worksheets and documents for planning, zoning, conservation commission to utilize to implement? Or even, like I was thinking, like I should have posted and let everyone know that this meeting was happening tonight so people tune in, so that people, know, but like that's all of us trying to do it volunteer.
Yeah.
Does the grant provide for, if we're creating surveys or outreach?
Yeah, I mean, the outreach and engagement piece is a major component of the contract, yeah. It's part of what the legislature had wanted with these HOP grants. We actually have to prepare an outreach and engagement strategy as part of this. She just sent it out today because it was just sent to us today by the HOP people, an email with documents. I think it was like examples of outreach and engagement, best practices. Prior to the start of all this, Chris and a couple other people, Sarah Wooten and Tammy a little bit, attended the Housing Academy, which is 4 training sessions, 2 in person, 2 online, about outreach and engagement. So yeah, it's a major piece of it. There are funds set aside for specifically doing that piece of the housing chapter, but also materials as well. So like for New Durham, we did little cards. I think we mailed out little cards to everybody saying we did a 3-hour community workshop on a Saturday in the gymnasium, and we had me and a couple other planners set up 6 different stations. We had some volunteers work 3 of them. We did 3 of them, and then people just rotated, and we had 50 people go through. So
So you've done this process already with another town, so you can bring good examples.
Yes. This is the second one that I'm leading, and I was intimately involved in Dover and Somersworth. Those are much bigger communities, so that was like a few more people on them.
Complicated.
Yeah, a little more complex. And there's also been, HOP grants have been used different ways too. They've been used as, do like a zoning audit. Or maybe they just knew specifically, we want to do this one major piece of a zoning amendment. So it's been different things. It hasn't always been a master plan chapter, but yes, I have done a few, yeah.
So the funding, this board would request funding through you?
No, the funding's there. We've already got the grant. It's just that the way, when you take money from state or federal government, it comes with stipulations.
That's
And
what I was asking about.
I guess,
yeah, well, the stipulations doesn't specifically say you've got to build X number of houses. So there's not like a goal set. But what it
Or
does,
serve the needs of the state versus a town. It doesn't say that, right?
At
what I-
some point, I'm
Wait,
gonna,
hold for a sec. What I was really asking is, let's say we want to do a mailing survey,
yeah.
which costs money, but we request that through you? Or how does the chair get that
Well, I
money
think-
to stuff envelopes, for instance?
I think we collectively agree with a workshop or however we're gonna come to the point where, yes, we wanna do mailers. There's a decision collectively that we do that. That will come out of that fund, and so we'll all be in agreement to do that.
Yeah,
That's
there's
what
a
I was
s-
asking, how does that funding get into somebody's hands in order to implement that? What's the mechanism?
They would do
Is
the
it a
printing.
purchase order?
They would do
No,
the
is there-
printing and.
We would say the questions, we would.
we
yeah.
think that, I may not be correct about this, that our town administrator can say, we want to designate, $2,000 for a mail out or something like that. I'm not crystal clear, because ultimately, she had to sign off to say, I'm the responsible party on this grant to, divvy it out, if you will. That's my impression.
So, all right,
Okay,
the breakdown of the contract shows that, it doesn't list out materials and stuff. I know we have it, I just gotta find it. It doesn't, like, it lists $2,000 for the community survey, a public forum, for $6,000, and planning board workshop for $2,000. So those are gonna be a big piece of the overall budget, because, one, it takes a lot of staff time to put it all together, but there's also materials that are part of that. Like in New Durham, we had big maps printed up, and we had a lot of materials laid out on table for people to interact with, whether it's sticky notes or sticky dots, saying, okay, here's 17 things that we all came up with. Put the dots next to the ones that you like the most. And then we can record that, because that gives us a good sense of, well, the people that showed up that day, what they preferred. We did a big mailing, like I said, we did the postcard mailing to get people to go to the workshop. And we put some flyers up around the community, different public facilities, the post office, about the community survey, right? So different things like that. So if this group wants to do something when we get into the throes of pulling together this outreach and engagement plan, I'll have a better sense coming into that meeting to say, okay, this is our materials budget, and what we can put towards a
Okay.
mailing or
So
something.
what I was asking is, where is that money? Is it in your bank account, or is it in the town's bank account?
It's a reimbursement program, so between my billable hours and whatever materials, any costs that the town incurs, like Alana put these binders together, she bought these binders, she printed all these materials, this will get reimbursed, her time will
Okay.
get reimbursed.
Now,
So all that will get
Okay.
put together into a reimbursement request that goes to the state, and then it comes back.
understood.
And then there's just a cap on the amount.
Okay.
Yeah, but there's $31,500 on the grant that has been issued. And a lot of other towns have done these. We're not the first and not the only. And in some cases, they've used all their money. In some cases, they haven't, and they've turned it back in. In some cases, they've done the first round. This is all from this housing academy that I went to for classes, courses. So some towns have been through 2 sets of grants, so they go, wow, this was very beneficial and helpful. Now let's go back and, do more updating on this and more changes or whatever they discovered to be beneficial and helpful for their town plan. It's a lot of these outreaches have already been done by many other towns at these group meetings that we went to. There might be 40, 50 people there from all over, small towns, big towns, and they had panels where they sat up in the front, and you might have someone from Nashua, and then you have someone from Lisbon, where I don't even know where it is. I know it's in the States somewhere. So there's 238 towns. So all these different people shared what they did for the community outreach. Some of them had something at their, at the town center, and they had pizza, and they just did surveys and so you brought up 2 things at the last meeting. I thought that were brilliant and important, and Dawn too. 2 things regarding the housing is, what do we see this town looking like in 5 or 10 years from now? That was you. And if you're gonna go somewhere, and this town is like a big giant boat, let's say, and we wanna go somewhere, we need a map. Where not to go, where to go, what is the ultimate destination? And, you might be sailing along that pathway and go, well, something changed and stopped that or interfered, and you have to adjust that and along the way. There's no, let's predict the future. Dawn pointed out that, we have, and this is in the minutes, that, there's a housing need for people that are already in the town, whether it's, for different ages, for different income levels, for different abilities. Different abilities might mean somebody that's blind. Well, they might not have the same income generating opportunity as somebody else to make money and to be able to afford our very expensive housing in this town. Somebody who's elderly on a fixed income may not be able to go back to work, and they get their $1,847 average Social Security check every month, and that's what they got to live on. And
I think that's where I'm like, and I said that in the first meeting, what is our problem to solve? Because maybe there should be programs available for people like that. Like, are we trying to solve that with the way we develop our town? Or should there be better resources or grants or funding available for folks
And
with disabilities and things like
perhaps
that?
we need to explore that and
Yeah.
consider, are there needs in the community? And, you know, your needs might be vastly different from somebody on a fixed income that can't work.
Right, but is that our issue to solve with our housing?
Well, all right, so I'm
Chapter.
gonna
Yeah.
pull it back over here for a second here. The New Hampshire Affordable Housing Association says we need, you know, somewhere between 30 and 40,000 new housing units within the next 20 years statewide. So I think the answer is housing is going to be built here, right? And so we just have to figure out how, where, and what, right? And what we can do with this opportunity is listen to the community, listen to the group, analyze the data, and try and, you know, work towards something that looks like, you know, a unified plan.
I think that's where I've been stuck, and I was in the last meeting, is there is a lot of external pressure and external need that isn't necessarily Nottingham or our master plan issue to resolve. I mean, that
I
could
don't think
fall on
anyone's expecting
taxes or,
30,000
yeah.
housing units to have to come in Nottingham. So I
I'm
don't think
not
you're
saying that.
solving anything.
Yeah.
I think this community is part of the state and part of the country and part of the world, and we all have to provide housing, right? So I think there's gonna be just,
Maybe people need to get paid more, or maybe taxes need to be different. I don't know that it necessarily has to do with us building houses.
30,000 houses for the state
yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
in, what's the timeline?
Right. and
60,000 new units between 2020 and 2030, nearly 90,000 new units between 2020 and 2040. We need to increase permits by 36% over recent levels.
And this isn't based on like a wish, like the state saying, we want, it's based on the need that they've
That's to get us to a
determined.
point where, you know, wages and housing increases are at least somewhat comparable. Because clearly wages have not kept up with housing, or housing has vastly increased, you know, however you want to frame it, but.
And we don't, like you had said, the only chapter we're required to have is the land use chapter. So our town doesn't necessarily have to address the state's 30,000 housing unit need.
Right. That's how I understand it.
Well, I don't think we're addressing the state's needs. I mean, we're looking at our community,
Yeah,
and
great,
what the community wants and needs are.
right.
And I think
Exactly.
I think we have to unbias it within our group, right? So, yeah, there's pressures in other places all the time, but I think we need to, I mean, this is a volunteer group that is a good mix of who's here in our community, and we're going to do that outreach to that community to hear them. So I think we'll unravel.
That's what I,
we'll
it's like,
unravel
I want to
that.
solve what Nottingham's
Yeah,
community
well, that's
needs.
our-
I don't
that's
want to
our
solve what,
purpose,
yeah,
yeah.
the state's needs are.
I'd like to take 5 minutes and talk about a master plan. I wrote a note here, and I've done a lot of research. I have gone through this housing academy. I've looked at our master plan, and believe it or not, I'm a boring person. I've read dozens of master plans with other towns, because that's part of what I do. I'm in the real estate business. I do work with real estate developers, and every town has different sets of rules, and honestly, it's like a scavenger hunt. Every single time you go into a new town, hey, we want to divide 2 lots. What do you got to do do it? So,
Before you get started.
yes, sir.
You said how many minutes? I'm just getting to know you, so I don't really know if your 5 minutes is 15. I just want to keep things on track, that's all.
Absolutely. So,
Okay.
this is about the implementation guide and the master plan. That's why we're here today. And here's the housing section, and here's the implementation guide. So I said, how do we know what was done in the past? How do we know where we're at today? So, right here, I've done research, and I could tell you the population of our town for every given year. 2020, it was 4,785 people. 2023, 5,399 people. It's gone up. We could predict, based on statistics, that it will probably go up more, possibly. In here, for example,
I'm not sure where you're, I feel confused about where we're going right now.
There's only a certain amount of land that can be developed, right? So do we have unlimited land that we can develop all these houses on?
Which
That's-
houses?
You just said that they're gonna increase.
Pardon me?
Each year, there's an increase.
Each year, there is an increase in the number of people that live in this town. Natural growth. We're not putting up walls around the town to keep everybody
Right,
out.
right.
In this town, last year, 46 people were born, 45 people died. 23 people the year before were born, 31 died.
How many people moved out?
How many people moved out?
How many people moved out our community?
In 2023, 22, there were 5,377. In 2023, there are 5,399. That is 22 more people. So if you wanted to really get into the nitty-gritty and the weeds, you go, well, in 2023, 3 people died more than were born, so therefore 19 new people came into the town, if you really wanted to dissect this data.
And does that mean then that 50 people left town and then 69 people came in? Or
Right.
does that mean that nobody left and 19 more people came in, right?
Yeah,
The
that's-
net effect
We
depends on how
won't
we
know
got there.
that, but I think that's some of the feedback we'll get from community, right?
Well-
We wanna know, and we don't wanna know, but we don't have to know. How many years have you been here? Are you new to the community? What things have you like about this community since you've just been here? What things you haven't liked? So I think some of those things because it can affect, if somebody said, I have a family of 4 and I can't afford my house, so I had to go somewhere else. Those are things that we're trying to accommodate.
We are here to accommodate the needs of all the people in the town, of all abilities, ages, incomes. Right now, the average income needed to buy a house in town is about $150,000. And that exceeds the average income for this town, which is about 100,000. That's
But
it.
for the county of Nottingham, of Rockingham, we have like some of we have almost the lowest prices.
These are statistics that are readily available out there in the world, that in the community report, there's an average income that Blair has provided us, an average income of the people, an average cross-section of the housing, number of rentals, number of, people that, age groups, et cetera. There's a massive amount of data out there. One of the two things grabbed me here in this world was I did this, report, it's called the Warren Group. And, when I looked at that, it's what we use in real estate, and we say, well, where are buyers coming from? And why do we want to know that? So when we market for a home, to sell a home, we want to market to the area and the particular type of buyer and get our dollars spent wisely to attract those types of buyers. We don't want to market to people that aren't going to consider buying or whatever. So this report did 196 transactions, and all of my data, I have a lot of it right here. I tell you exactly where I get all the data. I'm not making stuff up. I've not made anything up. I just pull it right off of the town report itself. Here's a planning page from the town report. It says, this is what we did last year for subdivisions. There's one from the building department. This is how many permits we issued last year. We have the population. This is how many new people lived in the town. We can look at the average house size and say, well, there's 100 new people in the last 5 years, but there's only 22 new houses. Do we need more houses in this town, potentially?
I
Maybe.
think that's what I want to
So
ask.
once-
Nottingham, I can understand as a real estate agent, you would want to attract people from outside to be able to buy homes, but what does Nottingham need? Like, if
Well-
Nottingham needs ADUs or elderly housing or places for their children to be able to
Well,
subdivide,
that's what our outreach is up to try to discover. So I'm gonna take couple minutes on this. Why
We
haven't?
already have,
Yeah.
so let's.
Yeah, I'm gonna
We've got
jump
a
in
big
here.
group here,
'cause I'm gonna-
And I want to make
I'm
sure
gonna
that
go home
everybody,
right.
Blair's, it's kind of
Okay.
Blair's agenda right
Yeah.
now.
We've
So-
spent 10 minutes and gone nowhere.
Right.
All right. What I do want to focus on tonight, I want to get a couple things accomplished, is I do want to give you an update on data. I know we were just talking about it, but big picture. One of the documents that SRPC produces, it's called the Data Snapshot. It includes all 18 member communities for our region, SRPC's region, which you're a part of. You're not part of Stratford County, but we have a couple of communities that are not in Stratford County. But it's the SRPC region. And then from that, they produce community profiles, which are about 8 pages long, and that is in your document. That big blue page is the beginning of it. That's your community's profile. We do 17 more of those, but those happen after the data snapshot. The data snapshot has been getting worked on since January, and it'll be released on April 18th. And then she'll start producing these community profiles. We are gonna be bumped up on the list because we are one of the communities that are getting worked on right now. But as far as having, I heard from a few people that wanted data for this meeting. That wasn't possible because it's not ready. And it's a lot of work if we just try to start grabbing it here and there. So it's gonna get done after she finishes up the data snapshot. She'll put this community profile together. And it's very easy to get at that point. So that's kind of my update on the data. I also put in your documents, there's a spreadsheet that might be your third or fourth document. This one? Is that this one? All right. So, this is, I guess you could call it the standard set, but it's 90% of the data metrics that we've been pulling together for our different communities over the last few years with these HOP grants and master
So
plan.
you call this data metrics?
Yeah.
What is the title of this information? Is it-
It's housing data. Each data point is referred to as a metric,
Okay,
and they're organized into themes.
okay.
So for example, in that document, at the top, you have annual median price trends. That, you can see where the source is. That's the New Hampshire Housing and Finance Authority. And it's in the theme of affordability, right? So if you kind of jump down a few ways, something like median age, that's in the theme of demographics. And then you have other ones, housing stock, household, and then more housing stock, income. So those are your themes.
That's clear.
Yeah. And each of those lines is referred to as a metric. Sometimes people call them a data point. I think metric is kind of like more the sophisticated way of referring to it. And then, of course, you'll see the sources and the years that we have available. But this is, again, I don't want to call it the standard set, but it's a lot of times this is what's getting included. And I sent this all to you on Sunday night. And if you had a chance to look at it, what I'm hoping to hear from some of you tonight is what you liked, what you didn't like. Were there data metrics that you didn't see that you were hoping to see? And yeah, that was basically it. Because at some point, I'm going to have to turn to her and say, okay, this is what the community is looking for. And it's, again, I keep referring to this as a standard data set for lack of anything better, but they're looking for the standard data set plus these 5 things or these 6 things, whatever it might be.
So this is
And-
the standard,
Yes.
and you're asking us if we have any more.
Yeah, are there things on here that you're not seeing that you would like to see?
Not to scratch off to limit.
Oh, yeah, we can take things off, yeah, if you think
No,
that,
I'm not saying we should, but I'm just,
yeah, that's another option, is to take it off, yeah.
Can you tell us how much elderly housing we have in this town?
So I just did a quick search. So what the state, oh crap, I see that. Yeah, the state does allow for elderly housing. I can look into it. I don't know if we have any age-restricted housing here in Nottingham, do we?
Number 8, population by age cohort. Not exactly sure exactly what that means,
Having 55 or 65.
but it does say
don't do.
age.
Northwood.
Sorry, I keep bouncing around between documents. All right, which one were you looking at? Sorry.
Number 8, it just says age. It says population and it says age, that's all.
Oh, so a cohort is a group of people. So, like common cohorts are aged 0 to 5, and then, because right, isn't it around 5 you start hitting the first grade, and then 5 to 18 or 19, so you're kind of capturing that 18 and under, basically meaning
Sure.
children.
But this may have some elderly information in it.
So this would just break out your population. You have 1,000 people. You've got 600 people in this group. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, yeah.
He was asking, do we have elderly housing and how many? Elderly housing would mean it's age restricted, typically 55 and older.
Okay.
So that's what he's asking us. I don't know the answer. I think the answer is none, but I will double check.
I'm sorry to be daft. I feel like you're asking if these are the metrics that we want to utilize to measure Nottingham's current housing offerings against? Is that right?
this is just gonna spit
This
out
is-
data to us.
Yeah, this is data,
Just-
right?
And this is the data that we would,
This is the
this
data.
is the
that-
data
data that we
we
would
would
use.
want
It
to
would
be able
come.
to inform our housing stuff, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it would just be the data that, some things may be more important than others.
So
Be a bunch of numbers that we get.
I see, number 1 is net migration, and I think we were just talking about how there's a difference between what a net migration number says, right? 19 people moved in versus how that number occurred. Was it, many people moving out and many people moving back in, or was it, kind of static? And I guess what I'm asking is it possible to get data that shows, yearly how many people left the community and how many new people came into the community? Is that a metric that is available data-wise? I don't know if that's even recorded in any way, right? Is somebody
Yeah, how
sells their
granular.
house, do you record where
Yeah,
they're going?
so we're all familiar with the Census Bureau at the federal level, right? And they do the decennial census, right? That's the thing that the Constitution requires, and that's every 10 years. But the census also does the American Community Survey, the ACS. I think you'll even see that on here as a source, the ACS. Those are done, if my memory is correct, it's every 2, 3, and 5 years. The further out you go, the better data you're going to get. It's going to have a much smaller margin of error, right? And even then, the margins of error can swing drastically. Your decennial data is going to be some of the firmest data with the least amount of margin of error. Those ones in between, they kind of give you a sense of how things are going, but again, you'll see some fluctuations. Like for example, I was talking to her today when I saw her. If you look on that community profile that I gave you, I think it was like number of housing units for this community dropped. Yeah, your housing stock between 2012 and 2017. So that's a 5-year ACS. That went down by, almost 100 units and then back up by 200 units.
Is that correct? I sent that note to you about
No,
that.
of course it's not correct. You didn't lose 100 units. You rarely lose 1 unit. I mean,
Right.
the idea of someone taking a house, wiping it off and leaving a blank lot is,
So I did see that in the data report, and like,
Yeah.
oh, wait a minute, we didn't have a major catastrophe or dam blowout that could happen now.
yeah. So, because the ACS is derived from something different. You all know the decennial, they come around to your house. If you don't fill out that form, they come knocking on your door, like they're pretty, it's one of the things the federal government does very, very well, because it's one of the few things that's specifically stated in our Constitution, you will count the people. So, that is a very reliable number, is that decennial, so 2010, 2020, so on and so forth. So to answer your question, I'm sorry, Drew, to answer your question is I don't know that the data can get that granular, like, we can probably find it, I think it's gonna have a huge swing, so if you're gonna use it, try to look out tell me to find it over a 20-year period, and let's see what that looks like, and is it going like this, is it going like this, but let's not look at it over a 10-year period, because as you can see, in the housing stock alone, something looked a little wonky.
I would like to add to that. if I could. So this Warren report that I was speaking of actually takes and dissects, it's a massive report, but it basically takes the address of every single buyer in the town and every single seller in the town, and you could specifically see where the buyers came from. So you could analyze and say, we had 11 buyers from Massachusetts, 8 buyers from Connecticut, a buyer from Idaho, 2 from California, and over a number of transactions. So yes, it's extremely detailed information. You can get down to, so in that report, out of 196 transactions in the town, only about 15% had a Nottingham address, which means that 85% were coming in from not Nottingham. And which also, in general, means it doesn't guarantee that people didn't move out. They might have taken a rental, if they could find one, but 85% of the population is exiting this town. And that's disturbing to me, that's like,
What? I don't get that leap.
You mean entering or something?
out of the transactions that are here, that properties that sold, 196 of them, I'll happily provide this report and dissect through it. And I found that so shocking that I actually started calling real estate people that sold properties to say, where did those buyers come from? Where did the sellers go? And to verify this, because it sounded so crazy that 85% of our population is leaving of the sale of the properties that sold, not our population, but on the properties that sold.
There could be so many, that can be a developer that owned it and then sold, developers do like 20 houses and then they sell them, so I don't.
And it's the buyer's address. I'm the buyer buying one of your 20 houses. Where did I come from? I came from Manchester. I came from Massachusetts. I came from New York.
Well, that's not a displacement, right? That's
Yeah.
somebody new coming into town. That doesn't necessitate somebody
If
leaving
it's a
like
new,
a.
but this is
You
done
were just
over
saying
all
new
transactions, so it doesn't limit it to only new
Gotcha.
construction, for
But most of
example.
we could look at which units are sold, and we have had several, like Foul Zone and larger developments that have sold, so that would actually make sense to me, that it's new stock.
Well, one of the things I think that's trying to be articulated is if all the housing stock is pretty much the same, single families, 4x2s, 4-bedroom, 2-bath, 2,000 plus square feet, if 70-80% of your housing stock looks like that, it doesn't give people options for step up or step down. So if you're a starter family, you don't have that sort of like starter house, 1,200 square foot, 3x1s. Or if you're an elderly person that doesn't want to take care of a big house anymore and they want to step down but stay in the same community. So finding out this information about, are people leaving, but did they want to leave? Some of them may have wanted to. They may have exited and gone to Florida, right?
Yeah.
That's certainly possible.
Or wanted, like we talked about last time, like access to a hospital or resources that we don't provide in
Right.
Nottingham.
And then there's a lot of people that may have wanted to stay, but there were no options because there's no step down type
Right.
housing. So, again, this is some of the information that I would like to tap into as part of our either survey or the community workshop, community conversations, the outreach piece, the engagement piece.
So you want an answer from us of what other items you'd want in here, right?
Yeah, and that would be,
Some of these tie into some of the other chapters, right? So I don't know, and I just want to, I'm gonna pick transportation for an example. Would we, in this, would anything like access to transit be a part of any of the housing decisions, or?
It could be, I mean, this isn't a community that's seen as anything other than a vehicle access community, you
Yeah.
know? It doesn't, so I don't think,
But is it prohibiting people from moving here? As you say, people would have to move out if those services aren't available to them.
Right, because if a person couldn't afford a car, per
Right.
se, and needed to take a bus to get to work, Nottingham's not an ideal place to live, so you
Yeah.
need that kind of information, or.
yeah. I don't,
We also see from the data that most are commuters, so they probably do have vehicles.
Vehicles.
yeah.
Sure
I'm
they
not-
are, I'm just
I'm
using
not
it as
sh-
an example.
I think in a community like Somersworth, for example, I just finished working at, that, I mean, we're talking about sidewalks and mobility issues, like,
Right.
I mean, that community, yeah, I think that's gonna have a play on, your housing decisions. Around bus stops and, you know, where I live, train stops, you're gonna want density, right? Or if you're gonna want density, you're gonna want it there usually, because those people, people that are needing that services would wanna live closer to them. This community, I don't see the overlap.
Right.
I think that in a community like this, again, fingers crossed, the natural resources piece is a lot more, it's gonna have more influence on your housing decisions than a transportation piece would be. I don't wanna speak for you all, it's just.
Or
I've noticed-
school, is school in this at all? I couldn't remember.
Well, school age population, yes, and we have, and speaking of data numbers that I absolutely live and die by, school, number of kids enrolled in the school, because they need to know where your kids are at.
Right.
Did we have 100 today, or did we have 101? Where's that
Right,
one
so
that's
they're
missing?
on it.
So that data point is very solid,
Mm-hmm.
and we have it, it's in that community profile, you can see it. I don't know which page it's on, maybe page 3 or something, but it's in here. You have all the public school enrollment, yeah, here we go, from 2013 to 2023. So that's all in here. Kindergarten, elementary, middle, and high school, and then total.
But I meant in the like, as far as like overlap, I guess, like what people are looking for in housing does usually tie to like what kind of school the,
Yes, in suburban communities, that's driving 80% of the conversation for families is if they're moving to this area, chances are they have a child they're putting into a public school and they're looking for at the school systems. One can make an argument that's why Barrington is very desirable. They have like 3 school options between, I think, Co-Brown, Oyster River, and
Dover.
Dover, is that what it is? Yeah. So, yeah, things like that definitely drive a decision here, yeah. But to measure that, I don't know that I can do that for you, because that's almost like interview style. You know, I don't know that I could do that. We have to make some inferences from what we're seeing in data, right? There's gonna be a little bit of a knowledge gap, but collectively, and, you know, I'm supposed to be a bit of an expert, you know, on reading this stuff and working with my team. But, you know, to try to, you know, fill that knowledge gap. But yeah, knowing exactly why somebody moved here would require an interview. Yeah.
that could be part of surveys, right?
It can be, yeah. And fingers crossed we get a good cross-section of the community that responds, because my experience is 65 plus tends to respond in a number.
Walk outside with a clipboard, because you had baseball.
78%
Why did you
of
come here?
I was like, oh, wait.
78% of our voters voted, like registered voters voted, so we do have an engaged
78?
community.
Really?
In the election or in town meeting?
In, I can't remember which one I read, but I think the presidential election.
Presidential.
Presidential.
It's not so good for local.
It's still pretty good
It is.
engagement.
It far
That's good.
exceeds the nation, so yes,
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
good indication of buy-in, and, you know, participation levels, right? So.
So is there any other
Specific to the
data sets?
survey.
Sorry, Kevin.
How can we get other towns' survey questions that they might have asked, that we could at least leverage and either add or?
Yeah, so I'm
Or
doing
remote.
just that. I pulled the one I did for New Durham because I know they're smaller than you, but the only other ones I could find were Newmarket, Somersworth, and Dover. I don't know if you see them as equal to you as like a New Durham.
They all have downtowns.
Yeah, exactly. So
think so.
the questions we were gonna ask them are gonna be a lot different. I think I have Barrington, and I think your populations are kind of similar. Do you see yourselves?
I think Barrington's similar.
Barrington's a little bigger.
Closer than the other three, anyway.
Yeah,
Definitely,
I'm narrowing it.
Barrington's more
Yeah.
in line.
So you'd have that info
I would have,
Right.
next time, or?
Yep.
They're encouraging
Yep.
it. They
So
might
that's a
not
good
be
start.
obviously.
yes, so one of my goals for the next meeting is to send you an outline of a survey. And I'm gonna put in more than we should have, because you don't want exhaustion from the survey, you want them to fill out the whole thing, but you'll help me narrow it down. But everybody was talking about data from the last meeting, so I felt like I had to address this. So that's why I'm kind of pivoting right now, not doing the outreach engagement and trying to focus on that, the spreadsheet here. I wrote down elderly housing units, I wrote down, I put down why did you move here? Because you had asked about that in schools, but we'll have to see if we can find a way to get to that answer.
I think if there is, it does seem like, at least from hearing on our town pages or at meetings, there are things about what are the housing crunches or concerns that people are experiencing here, which seem to be family oriented, that kids want to, kids are fledging from the house and they want to stay in the community, but they can't afford to buy.
I would almost
here.
say, why did you leave
Or-
here more
yeah.
than even why did you come?
So I was looking at Rye, New Hampshire's. I just happened to come across it, and theirs was, I thought, really good. They were asking a lot of questions that require narrative answers, as opposed to, do you like this, or this, or give me your yes or no. It makes it harder for me, but I thought it kind of gets at the root of the problem. So they were asking questions like. All right, where was it? Okay, when you think of living in Rye in 5, 10, or 20 years, will your current home meet your future needs?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
That's a good one, right?
Sure is. It brings the time frame. What do you want in 5 or 10 years? And-
But it's also-
and that really it goes to a point.
Yeah, and it gets to, are you a young person that might have children and this house won't fit your needs? And Rye won't, you can't find a house in Rye. Or you're older and you might in 5 years want to downsize. Does it fit your needs, right? I think that's a really good question. The one that I wrote myself, it comes off a little tough, but I think it could be, the edge could be smoothed a little bit, but it was, describe a friend or family member who is struggling to find a home. And if you could downsize or upsize your home and stay in Nottingham, would you? So there's questions like that. Yeah, it doesn't come across as nice as the Ryes did, I know. They're all fancy pants down there. You got an unpolished Blair, that's your problem. But I'm trying to get at this idea of having people talk about housing from perspectives that are not today. Because most of you, if you're here, you're probably not struggling with your housing, right? If you're struggling with your housing right now, you don't have time to volunteer for a group like this or participate in a lot of these things, right? And it's going to be hard to tap into that group. So talking more about people that you would mention family members that people know, and then just also your future self. That's the idea behind some of those questions. But again, that is going to, go ahead and say what you're saying. We're going to get into the survey at the next meeting.
Just gonna, I guess, add I know there's we have open space subdivisions which allow for smaller homes, even the type of development that has been attracted or being performed in here, which is really driven by the market. So that's, we can't necessarily control a lot of that, but things would we ask, do you like the idea of village districts, or do you like the idea of consolidating you know, development towards this part of town, or, you know, would that?
I often get surprised by people who say, ugh, open space, I hate that. And we're like, oh, that's actually what the town is pushing for, to conserve that
And it's allowing more
space."
homes to happen without sprawl, and they are,
And right.
in theory, smaller and more
Right.
affordable.
And like, you're getting all this acreage that doesn't get
Right.
touched and can never be touched, and it's contiguous, and so that, like, a lot of people miss that,
Right.
like, part of it. So those are, you know, good questions to.
So that was one of the implementation goals that I was trying to get to before. That was, mentioned in the last plan, and there was a zoning ordinance that allowed for that, a change to the zoning ordinance, and there are zoning reports since that date that report on how many lots and houses and subdivisions were done. I've compiled a lot of that data, if anybody cares,
Yeah, that would be great to
I
see.
have
the-
average house price, how many houses sold every year, how much new inventory was added to the tax base.
I just
how
meant
many-
asking people if they liked that, or want more of that, you know,
Yeah.
in the surveys.
Or less.
Like Blair said, the importance of making sure, like, you know, like kind of what I just said, like, I was like, oh, the last master plan, that was the big push, was to do these open space, but then you talk in the community, people are like, I hate these cluster neighborhoods and these small
Right.
lots, and you're like, so I think it's important that, you know, there's not a disconnect between, like you said, because we're not in those positions that other people are in, that we're not sort
Are
of.
people saying that are living in
I
them?
know, that's what I was gonna say.
That what?
Who's saying that? Are the people
that are
living in them?
there?
No, other people, like, when, you know, they see a cluster subdivision come up, they like freak out, because they want like the traditional, like, big sprawling lots and spread out neighborhoods, and I'm like, oh, but, you know, there was a real push in the community to do that, to conserve all that space, so
All right.
sort of that, like,
So
disconnect.
It's a visual element.
Yeah, I think it's a
They
visual.
just don't like the way it looks.
Right, they hate them, or they think it's maybe more
Okay.
sprawl than what it actually is.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just like, I guess in my mind, it's like dovetailing. So if you hear back from the community, yes, we want more accessible housing, we want more affordability, we want elderly, we want children to be able to whatever, like, then also inputting the data of like how that looks in our town and what we've already tried to prescribe some of that. And so then building off of, did that work? Do people need more education around that? Or, you know,
Yeah.
I feel like it all
Because
fits in together. Like,
one thing I anticipate hearing a lot within this group, and people talk about rural character when they
Right.
live out here. So that's why I was asking you if it was people inside of it or outside. 'cause
Outside,
it-
I think people
it's the-
outside of it
it's the visual.
perceive
Yeah,
that as
yeah.
not being rural character, when it's actually the complete opposite of what the goal was, I think, was to protect the rural character.
Yeah,
The
what
issue
ends
is,
up
like,
happening is they make a shorter cul-de-sac, and then all the
Yes.
protected land is behind it.
Yes,
Yeah,
so people,
unfortunately.
I don't know that that's connecting necessarily with
it's
the
also
community.
like cheaper to clear cut instead of select cut. So like if the developer was doing it differently and just clearing the house lot, they would look a lot different
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
that.
So I'm wondering.
Maybe that's something we can have in our
Does
zoning.
the SCRP have data on, I don't even know how to phrase this. Do they have data on like a town has so many, you'd call them natural resources probably. What does a certain land area or a town need to keep people healthy?
Yeah.
So are there data point, like, because this is all awesome and everybody, lot of data. But like, it feels like there's this big piece, and I wasn't here last week, so forgive me that maybe you talked about this. But like this all is projected onto this land mass called Nottingham. And I'm just wondering, where are the data points, like, I'm just gonna make some up. How many, what's the pollution levels in our lakes and rivers? how many do you need to have to keep a certain square footage hydrated? Where's the biodiversity levels that when they fall, you start seeing the unhealth of the land happen? I mean, we know this stuff.
Ticks,
We
mosquitoes.
we know it's out there, and I'm just wondering, have we done that? Because this is all fine and good, but don't we want to do all this housing and meet all these people's needs based on what this land has to give and how this land can be resilient to do that? So then what did you call it, space?
Open space.
Open space. Then the open space, has a different kind of oomph to it. But without that, and we're just gonna do more housing, and trends come and go, but the land is always here. And it has been forever. And I just feel like it always gets underrepresented. And I would just really like if you have data that says like, oh, when you have this many square acreage, and this many ponds and rivers, and you start putting in this many roads, we see a decline in amphibians, or we see a decline in this much biodiversity, so that could guide us. And I feel like that would, the land always guides us, but usually we're unguided. And what do we get? We get like Route 125 through Barrington, what it's becoming, right?
Hypertension and,
Well, and then all the health things, and that's all legit. That's all legit and proven, okay? So, and pollution. So how does that, because I want to do the best for every kind of person. I want everybody to have what I have, okay? Which isn't a whole lot. But
But it's enough, right?
it's
I mean,
enough.
How much is
Yeah.
enough?
right.
A little is a
right.
lot if
Yeah.
it's enough, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, like, what are we basing all this on? Because it pressed a button when we said rural character.
Yeah, is there a definition
No,
of
but,
like
like,
rural character in general though?
Doesn't rural character sound like I hate that. I mean, in this day and age, like rural character's nice to have, but you don't really need, no, we're not talking about rural character. We're talking about like the health and wealth and resilience of the land and its inhabitants. And so I just feel like this is a lot without it being based on much right now, which I'm sure you probably have something to say about that.
I can appreciate, where the angle where you're coming from. As I said in the beginning of this, if fingers crossed we were to get the Natural Resources Master Plan Chapter Grant, we could look at we could look at the natural resources and development options and try to find that balance. But are there the data that you would be looking for is not a single piece of data that I'm aware of. Where what I've written down is you were talking about health of the land, you were talking about indications. What can the land support, correlation between development and biodiversity. Those answers are going to be very gray area, and they're going to be very dependent on interpretation of many different data points. So can I give you data points that you could then make an argument to say that we're doing unhealthy, we're doing over healthy, we're too healthy, or we're doing a balance? That's going to be for the group or for the town. But I can give you the data points, a lot of the data points that would help you make your arguments. But there's nothing that I'm aware of that would really say, well, yeah, this is the metric that measures that. And the example I would give you is because, look, I live in the city, and I see healthy people, I see unhealthy people. I think you could find the same out in rural areas and suburban areas.
No, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like land Yeah, I think everybody knows what I'm talking about, but. and-
The
and-
water quality
and-
of
and I know-
Nottingham is what
and I
feeds
know
Dover and
that-
Durham and all
I know that
those.
it gets
Yeah.
chiseled down
Yeah.
every time
I
I
know.
stand up for it.
I know.
Right? So, there's something, like for example, there's something called a bioregion, okay? And bioregions are about 6,000 people, and they're usually based on the topography and the rivers and the trade centers. And it takes about 6,000 people to have local commerce, and have daycare centers and schools, and like, it's a little thriving community. So this is before, you know, globalization and capitalism. This is a village idea, okay? So there's that information, which is worldwide and out there. So, and I mean, I'm a little bit schooled in that, so I'm thinking like, well, how does that body of bioregionalism, how does that compute into Nottingham? Maybe, you know,
I-
so.
That's, at the beginning, when I was wondering about these metrics and affordability and demographics, like, that's where I was coming from, of saying, like, who says that's what Nottingham is measuring a successful housing chapter on?
Because, you know, it gets to like, oh, you know, we want housing and we want like, you know, we want to like take these resources and turn it into like whatever. You know, you have that all the time. And I always believe that that can always be worked out. But what you don't, but that's, it's like you have that all the time. But it's based on this place, you know? And
Well, if our grant comes through, that Blair has referred to, one of our goals is to look at our resources and to map them, and then to find critical regions that support wildlife and should be left alone because they are critical regions. Like Quincy Pond area with the Fen and all that, and then other regions where it would be fine, maybe to increase development.
And
But
we
one of the big concerns I have for this area is we're all on wells and we all have septic tanks. You know, that's not true of the municipalities.
No.
We're all tapping into the same aquifers and we're all dumping our sewage into the same ground. And like the lakes are starting to show this. And we need to consider that in terms of where and how much we build, so that we try, like you were saying, to provide the best for the best. But we're unique, and we have wonderful resources, and I just hope that we get some of, at least a piece of that grant, so we can start that mapping, and we
do
can
have
really
some
get a
of that
picture.
mapping, though. It might be old now, but I know that that came out of the community profile. It feels like 100 years ago. But,
Well, I have an aerial map from 1942 that was done by the Army Corps of Engineers.
this wasn't that far ago, but does anyone remember the community profile? So, I was an active member in that, and so, and then came the first master plan, maybe in 2011.
I recall that had projected that the carrying capacity of Nottingham on well and septic would max out at 10,000 residents.
You know, I don't know, it just seems like it would be more real if we knew that information. You know, like, otherwise it feels really judgy, like, oh, I think we need this, I think we need this, I want, you know, more protected land. If that's not, that's just like almost opinion, but if it's based on like the capacity of the land and its limitations, then it feels like we can get to work, you know?
I think that some of that is subjective, though. I mean, how much land makes you happy?
No, I'm
And-
not talking about that, though. I'm talking about like the land we need to keep the air clean here, the water clean
The
here.
health of the town.
Yeah,
Is that another way to say it?
yeah.
You know, you can't put 100,000 people in this town and have healthy water, sewage, you know, is that the analogy that you're
Yes,
saying?
and you know, like
So we have,
we've looked at the natural resources to a degree, but we haven't, like, this is a new time, like, we haven't,
That's what we're trying.
We-
We're trying to do that.
you know, there's the changes in the weather that's happening. There's, you know, I don't know, like, I came down because, like, I thought I could be really helpful, like, for, emergency. Like if this town had a hurricane, like, how would we handle that? Like, there's all this stuff that's like coming down the pike, and master planning, to me, is about housing, definitely. It is about economy, definitely. But it's also about these other things that I find are just as important. And in a way, the cart before the horse before the cart, in an important way like that you said a little while ago. Like, some of these things are connected. Like, I immediately see a red flag when things are so siloed. You know, everything is interconnected. All the different chapters are very interconnected. And if they aren't, they should be. You know?
Yeah, I guess I keep thinking of, like, the survey, I think, would be so beautiful, because then we can get at, you know, what are you looking for? How do you measure success and progress? Like, I'm always bummed out that the housing market is what says how we're doing as a country, and not health or access to natural resources or clean air or anything.
And I think that if you take care of the natural resources, that the housing, that everyone wants to live here, and that's a great thing.
I think everyone just wants to have a home to live in. I think part of the housing crisis is that, I think Blair said it eloquently before, we're kind of all taking advantage, you know, forgetting the fact that we're probably here because we are home secure, if we weren't home insecure, so.
We
I
did
think-
buy the oldest and cheapest house on the block in 2009. But
you know.
I'm saying, like, how can we say what metrics we want to look at if we don't know what the people want?
Well, I think
We haven't
that's
done
the
the
goal of the
survey.
survey.
Yeah.
Right,
To
that's-
find out.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think this is just the foothold of the data.
It's
Right.
a
And
starting
we have
point,
to
and I
start
can,
building.
and what I can tell you is that data is available. We have that.
I say,
So-
let's get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, but we do need to know kind of at the same time. I can't ask her to keep pulling little bits here and there, because each time she has to go back into it, that takes a lot
Is
of
there a
time.
quality of
What do you
life
mean?
measurement in here?
If you say, go forward with this, with this list, I can do that. But if people come to me
Later?
late or
You need to do it as a
little,
group.
it'd be one thing if it's like, these two things would really make a big difference. Okay, fine. But if it keeps trickling in, it's gonna tax the system. What were you gonna say? Sorry, or what did you say? I'm sorry.
Well, you were saying we could add other things, or things that we didn't see, and I was trying to capture maybe what she was saying about a measurement
you-
of.
I'm trying to too. I mean, if you want to noodle on it a little bit and like send me an email or something like that about what you think would help get you to that answer, that would be helpful. If I have it, I'll pull it. I'll grab it. If I don't, if anyone else thinks of something, please share it with me. But why don't we put a pin in data for the moment and talk a little bit about these items here that that the previous you guys had set forth. If you could pull up that spreadsheet that shows the 6 tasks that we were going to do, and if we could go through each one and if anyone already knows off the top of their head that, you know, 1.1, 3, and 4 were already done, just let me know. But where we stand. So the first one is ensure that the zoning ordinance continues to allow a permitted independent dwelling unit. I'm presuming this is an accessory dwelling unit within the existing structure in all zoning districts. Is that what people think that would be as ADUs?
Yeah, that's what I assumed it
Reads
meant.
to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So that may be implemented.
yeah, I
We
believe.
do.
It's
have-
the all zoning districts that I'm not
Yeah.
positive about.
We only have 3,
But
and the
that's-
only one would be the commercial one, and that doesn't allow. So, all right. It's an accessory use. If it's a single family in the commercial district, they can do it. You have to let them do it, right?
Yeah.
It's
right.
not that it's a permitted use, because single family isn't a permitted use. use. But you could do it if you had a single family. So my guess is, my interpretation would be yes, it's allowed there. But yeah, I thought the same thing.
Wait, so what if like you had a business in a commercial zone and you wanted an apartment so you could afford to like live over it? Is that,
No.
You can't
would-
do
It would
that.
have to be already a resident.
so it'd have to be a
residential unit.
house, right?
So that is in the commercial district. So it pre-existed in the commercial district.
Correct,
Right
so,
now, that no housing is allowed in the commercial district.
correct.
But if you're there before, then you're there.
So if this is
But they
ref-
can still add an ADU in.
Right, so if this is, right, gotcha.
Yes,
So,
I would interpret that as right. I think what she was asking, is mixed use allowed?
right, that's,
In the commercial district?
because is that the,
Like,
if
could
this
she-
is talking
could
about
she add a
ADU,
house or a residential unit to her business?
can I add an ADU to my, if I have an auto
Mm-hmm.
repair shop and I need to live over it to support keeping that business, can I have an ADU on my, I was asking more of that, because this seems to be referring to an ADU as opposed to a,
It does, because it's talking about independent.
We
Let's
should
just take the action to
address
review
that
the
question in a
zoning
moment
and
when we get to this place that says mixed-use districts.
oh,
All right,
okay.
yeah, let's do that. All right, so I'm gonna say, does everyone agree, number one has been completed?
Yeah.
All right,
I'm gonna add on the ADU that there are limitations on ADUs, so that not all homes could accommodate an ADU. There's, one of the things that's going on in the state level is that they are, setting forth, this is done by state law, that the state said, hey, all houses need to be allowing ADUs because there's people's families, people can't find housing, so their kids are still living in their house. And, maybe you don't want your kids living, in your kitchen and making a mess and leaving the pots and pans for you. So it allows people to add an apartment for their kids or for an elderly parent or, a sister who got divorced or whatever the circumstances are. They're also looking at adding, detached ADUs, which, might come down from the state, and it was discussed at the planning board whether it should be allowed or not allowed.
It
And,
wasn't really discussed, it was brought up for potential discussion, but the planning board did not get in the weeds on detached. We tabled that
we
discussion.
tabled it, you're right, but
Yeah.
it's, so
Planning
there's,
board didn't go over it and decide not to do it or to do something, you just haven't really addressed it.
so ADUs are in fact allowed. There may be some additional increase or decrease potential to that might allow more if that's what the town wants to do, or allow them in a detached dwelling, so.
So would
it
that be
should
a new action, just because like this action was within the existing
Yeah, this is talking
structure?
about
Right.
ADUs
Attached,
in
in
the same,
the
not
same,
detached
right.
ADUs, so.
This would be
that's
almost like a new,
separate,
separate
yeah.
action item altogether,
yeah,
yeah.
down the road, yeah.
Well, we ought to,
All right, so did we amend the commercial zone of the town center section of the zoning ordinance to be a village center zoning district? I believe,
We do have a village.
We have a village
Yes.
center, but
Yeah.
yeah.
we also have a commercial,
Is this the?
So we have, so the town zoning map
probably did have.
has 3 districts. It's just not labeled right on the zoning map, but you have an area that is around the intersections of Raymond Road, Stage Road,
It's right here.
Paul's Way.
That's liars.
This, yeah.
Is
You
that,
just spilled out liar's paradise.
is that Liar's
Yeah.
Paradise? Oh, okay, right. So that is considered to be your
Town center.
village center.
Center.
Liars?
And so H1.2
The
says,
library,
it
liars.
says amend the commercial
right?
zone of the town center section, right? So is that referring to the town center? It used to be commercially zoned, and now the town center is zoned as the village
Amend the commercial
district,
zone.
right? Because it does say the town center.
In the zoning regulation, it's town center district, so there's no village referral in
Oh, okay.
in the zoning.
Oh, is that what it is? Yeah, I was getting confused.
Town
the
center.
words.
Center.
So we should,
And it doesn't have a map, but it does have a description of where it is, 500 feet from the nearest.
What's the difference between the two? A village center zoning district and a town center district? Is that something
Very
we should
little.
know?
I don't think there's.
We don't
any-
have one.
There's no distinction between the two.
Oh,
We don't have a village center district or anything
Okay.
like that, yeah.
Do
Other
village-
communities, some communities call it a town center, some call it village. There's no standard of what, oh, a town center means this, a village means this. It's just, what you want to call it.
So is it it's a different, zone than a commercial zone? Does it have different
Your
regulations?
commercial zone is Route 4, 500 feet or 1,000 feet off the road. 1,000 feet off the road the whole way. That's your commercial industrial district. Your town center district is Liars Parish. So yes, you do have that.
Different
And
restrictions.
Blair,
and
do
different-
village center zoning districts have their own, are there certain land use controls that are allowed within those districts that are not allowed in other districts? Or, I guess what I'm asking is, what is the point of a village center zoning district?
that's what I
as
was trying
opposed to
to-
the town center? Why would we want to, why did this action item arise?
Yeah, well, it does predate me. As I was just explaining over here, village district and town center district, they're just names, right? So there's no like state type of designation that if you're gonna do this, you have to call it this. It's just what you guys wanna call it. Your town chose to call it a town center. What does this town center allow that, your residential district doesn't allow? It allows, I think it allows a little bit more in the way of commercial. So it allows for retail, wholesale, service facilities, theaters and professional office space.
I do have the zoning ordinance up here on page 5 for the town center district, and it lists all the potential uses that are in that district. And that we could all look at that, and we could say, are these professional offices, government buildings, here we are, wholesale or retail establishment, eating and lodging, mortuaries, well, okay.
Yeah, but that's not the action. The action is,
Yeah.
did it get amended? Yes or no?
We have a
Yes, the
Town
answer is
center
yes.
district.
Thanks for digging.
So the
I was
status-
just trying to answer the question of how is it different?
Yeah. so
But
the-
yes, you're right.
So the status is done, let's move on.
So that did get completed.
It did.
Even
It's-
though we're not, so I guess my confusion is that it's just not called a village center zoning
Right.
district?
Oh, the
Is that
town
why I'm
center.
confused?
That's right.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Cross out village and put town, and that's what that says.
Two things.
All right.
Town center section to be a village center. Oh, I see what you're saying. I didn't really see that. I'm gonna go ahead and say yes.
Because there are village districts which are very different, right, than town centers. Like you can establish, like the lake could establish a village, just like there's some sort of push for village districts. And
His
like
definition just a minute ago says they're the same thing.
Yeah, I
Different
think it's
words,
just,
same thing.
I think it's just a label.
okay.
Are we sure?
I will look, I'll look into
I
it.
think
We're
we
giving something
intended.
up Because a village sounds really cool, like with sidewalks and like.
We can.
I don't want to make up a narrative, but my husband is Ed Veal, and I know that he went to a lot of the state's trainings on creating or looking at zoning, commercial, fostering, smart development or whatever, and there was a big push for creating village districts that you would look at
Right.
making sidewalks or
That's- yeah.
to drive your like restaurants or like certain things like that.
So we
In a
don't have a
space.
village, we don't have any sidewalks.
We don't have a town
But
center.
I'm just saying, I think the
Have a
idea,
restaurant.
now I'm making up
We
a
have a
narrative,
liar's
but
paradise.
in my memory,
People, I'm sorry.
So,
I think that was
The
part of the
reason-
intention was in that.
I haven't said it, but now I'm being questioned, so now I'm gonna look into it, I'm writing a note. But I will tell you this, when I come to a community like this, I would never say town center, I would say village. Because that is much more palpable. Because
Right.
people think town center and they think you're talking about Farmington downtown.
Right, or
right?
Epping's little
Yeah,
center.
if I
you know.
say village, it's, oh, cute. Oh, I vacation in village districts all the time. Yay.
Right.
So, in my mind, they're different. But from a regulatory standpoint, I don't think they are, but I'm going to look into it.
Okay.
And
I
I'll
think
try-
we
I'll
should
have an
make
answer.
sure.
Or maybe one of the action items is we'll just make it a village center.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, rename it.
Change the rename it.
Hey, it's marketing 101, right? You gotta give the people what they
Yeah.
What
want.
changes
I'll look
would you
up.
like to see in your village district in 5 years from now? This is the defined area. Do you want to?
And most people are gonna say, what's that? Where
Yeah.
is that?
Yeah, do we have one and where is it? And,
Yeah.
yeah. Does it have a coffee shop?
Does it have a coffee shop? That's,
I get a latte.
The village is
can we have a coffee shop, please?
versus,
I think with the migration though, of people, like people come from places that had cool stuff. And that those are gonna be the people who help bring some of that here. So we shouldn't poo-poo it. I think that the 5, 10, 20-year thing should have some vision of that, what would it be like if, you know, my kid could go to the library and I didn't have to worry about it, because they could ride their bikes on sidewalks or whatever, you know? So I don't wanna blow over it. I think that,
oh, we're definitely not blowing over it. This is
Okay.
just, did we do it already? Or did we do the thing that we
just
said?
amend.
right,
But-
yeah.
Can we improve it with this next iteration of a housing master plan chapter? That's one of the things that we're gonna,
Yes,
we're
I think
gonna,
that's important.
All right.
we're gonna, we're
Yes.
gonna,
And I was just gonna say that I can pull up whatever that, the training and the
Yes, please.
source was.
Yeah.
That, I think the intention was behind that, cause it was about mixed use, consolidating like really cool stuff to like a town like ours to address the outside pressures or things in a mindful
Yep.
way.
yeah,
If there's
it's,
anything to share with that, I would love to.
Yeah, I'll look at the link and.
if anybody ever sends me anything, tell me if you want me to distribute it, and I'm happy to. We are technically a committee, therefore, we're technically bound by open meeting law, which means you probably shouldn't be having a lot of conversation. Again, as Dirk has sort of alluded to, we are a subcommittee, but just be mindful of this. I'm not gonna be nearly as vigilant as if I would be if it's, you know, I've got 2 board members here right now. That's why we have to have a public meeting. Yeah, just be mindful of that, so.
And I would like to also get on the email sometime,
yeah,
at some point,
I-
so.
Yes, I didn't know that you were gonna be part of it, so yeah, I will
Okay,
definitely get your information before I leave. Or maybe I'll give you mine and you can email me, so I have your
Okay,
email address.
That'd be great.
Yeah, cool, thank you.
Lauren, I have your email address too that I can forward to
Okay,
Blair to
cool.
make sure that he gets it.
That would be
Yeah.
just as awesome, thank you. All right, so H 1.3, this is about multifamily. Review Article 2 of the ordinance, dwelling unit requirements. Section F, multifamily. At present, the area and dimensional standards are too restrictive to provide any practical opportunity for multifamily housing. So, for those of you who don't know, I know off the top of my head, multifamily is allowed, but you need to have the same, if you want 4 units, you have to have 8 acres. Because right now, we are 1 unit per 2 acres. So if you want 4, you need 8. My guess is that that's how it was in 2011, and it was considered to be too restrictive. But I don't know off the top of my head if what they were referring to was too restrictive and was 1 to 2, one a unit per 2 acre.
Is that the only thing?
Yeah, I don't recall, I think there were other things, in there that were supposedly too restrictive, and that being maybe some setbacks or something like that, I don't know. I don't think they're too restrictive, but.
Okay, so, multifamily development, standards, a duplex, shall meet the minimum land requirements as required for multifamily use in that zone. That really doesn't help us out.
I mean, it does, but it hasn't changed, so what is saying too restrictive? So is it saying to change it?
So what this is, so the okay, here we go. Land area for a duplex, land area for a duplex unit will be 4 acres. So 1
And 300 feet frontage,
and,
as I recall.
Yeah, so they're suggesting that we, or they, look at it and see if it's too restrictive, or leave it as is.
yeah.
And when we do a survey, that could be a question.
We did have a lot of conversations around multifamily at the planning board level. I don't know if this was completed or not, whether it was decided that it's not too restrictive. I'm not 100% sure what that is, but.
Well, this looks like a statement, not a question at present, so whenever this was, it said it was, but did we improve since then? right, is the question? Because it looks like they were making a statement that it was too restrictive,
Yeah,
but
it's-
has it gotten
to
less restrictive
me.
since? Is
Right.
that what we're trying to
We
establish?
have ordinances that allow, you know, multifamily and like old, like
Houses,
farmhouse type thing, right? So that they don't
farmhouses.
get torn down.
Yeah.
Was that something that was implemented to help address
Maybe.
this?
Yeah.
I don't know when that zoning
And then
ordinance.
That's what I
there's
think
that
we need to
part-
know.
Or that 4 apartment thing on 156.
Right, next to the school there,
Right.
that's like a 5-unit, and there's, right,
Oh, right.
like you said, there's several like houses, but, yeah, I guess we'd need to know what it was before to know if the action was achieved or not. Or is it saying it's too
This could be
restrictive,
an
right?
opinion rather than a statement, so.
Well, this was their action items, this was was this the last master plan's action items, right?
No, it's.
What is this?
Yeah, it's an action item from
Yes.
the last master
Right.
plan.
So if we.
So that group felt like it was too restrictive. So to your
Right.
point, Dawn's point, go back and look at what the
The
zoning
zoning
was
was
at
then.
that point. Or I can look at town warrants. I have town warrants from 2019 up through now and all the zoning changes since then. And nothing was done, nothing had been done. Permitting-
Since,
the permitted use wording in this section that was already specified within these. Yeah, there hadn't been anything that changed that district, or that, multifamily.
Multifamily.
So,
so
if it happened, it would have happened before 2019, and I can go back and look.
okay.
Or I can look through
Sue's.
Sue's
So,
lovely
to
bag,
that, to that point,
get that answer.
We might also.
So it's a bit of a question mark on that
It's a
one.
question
they
mark.
could have pursued a warrant article to put to the people of the town, and apparently that wasn't done. So,
We
It hasn't
might
changed.
consider whether that goal or objective was met and successful or not successful, and one way to measure that would be to say, how many multifamilies were generated since 2011? And I can tell you that there's one at 370 Stage Road, a 4-family that was done in 2015, and that there's one 2-family that just got approved.
Chris, I
Right.
think
Yeah.
what you're suggesting is
But
to
it's-
compare against a baseline we wouldn't have, right? You're saying to see if this was effective by looking at how many multifamily houses were built, but we don't know how many would have been built if, I don't know, nothing happened, if all of this happened, if, you know, we
And
can look at it
also-
as a snapshot to see where it's going.
Also, the
but-
question on the floor is, we're not talking about that. All we're asking is, did this
Did it
get done?
change? Did it get done?
The answer is question mark. Blair's gonna look into it.
Perfect.
H 1.4.
Thanks, Blair.
Do we have a housing commission who has been studying and recommending housing programs and ordinances?
No.
No.
No. All right, so the answer there is no. Wow, we are 2/3 of the way here. Work with, maybe I have to read the top. Work cooperatively with regional and nonprofit entities to encourage greater variety of housing. Work with such research agencies as SRPC and NIFA, Housing Finance Authority, to determine the level of need for affordable and workforce housing in Nottingham, as well as approaches to accommodate a broad range of housing opportunities.
is that what
Sounds
this-
like what we're doing
is that
now.
what this committee is all about?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just now? Is that the
And,
answer?
you know, this is,
In
you know,
progress.
this is a very,
This is not.
very thin, recommendation. I think you could say yes, it's been accomplished.
Yeah, I think SRPC is involved.
To what level would be the arguable
But
part?
yeah, I think that 2010 census, I remember they kind of put a spotlight on a lot of towns, us being one, for having no workforce housing, if I remember correctly. So
Okay.
that's probably where that came
Okay.
from.
Fair enough.
Wait, so what are we saying? We've done this? Because I don't think we've
No,
done
in
it.
progress,
I-
if anything.
Yeah,
I
it was-
imagine
it's
we'll
in
be
progress.
probably addressing
Needs a
that.
lot of work, yeah.
Okay, so I will say in progress. Or you could say no.
Weekly in progress. or
Weekly in
like-
progress.
Yeah.
All right, so let's say no.
I'm gonna say no.
Yeah.
And this was based on surveys last time or recommendations from the SRPC and the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority?
It just said to work with those
Work with
groups.
Yeah.
What the recommendation was based on, I don't know, because the only thing I can find on your website is just the final chapters.
Yeah.
I'd have to go back through, and we can all do that.
So we don't know if like the town of Nottingham said, yeah, we want that.
No, what happened is there's a state law that said all towns in New Hampshire have to make a reasonable adaptation for affordable housing, workforce housing, from the state. All towns, we are one of those towns. And so, and if you don't, and somebody comes in and says, hey, I want to put a development in, and you don't have any sort of protections, then they can appeal you straight to the state, to the land appeals, and get given whatever permits they wanted. So, it's
I don't-
protects the.
That doesn't sound right.
It's
at
not
all.
great,
Yeah.
no, it's not.
No, right, it's.
And I
that
mean, at any
doesn't
point, the
sound-
developer could come in and say, hey, we wanna, sue the town, and they happen in Massachusetts and some,
Is that accurate, Blair?
I have to check. I know in Massachusetts it is, but they have metrics of like, you have to meet a
There is-
certain minimum of deed restricted housing. I don't know about here in New Hampshire.
there's workforce housing, look up the RSA's, type it in, you'll find it. State, it's a New Hampshire RSA, it's a law.
It's adopted,
All right, we already put no
Simple.
on that one.
all right. Yeah, I mean, reasonable and realistic opportunities for the development of workforce housing. You know, that's not very definitive.
But we're not doing that now?
No.
That's why it's no?
So, yeah, well, yeah, it seemed like the group is either in progress, weekly in progress, poorly in progress, or no.
We have no workforce housing in this town.
No.
Workforce housing is specific definitions
Yep.
of income limits and, of, what people, workforce housing could be what a police officer in our
No,
town
no,
can
this says
afford.
determine the level of need for, doesn't mean what's already here. This is just
Yeah, we,
to determine the level of need.
I'll
I'm
look
just
and
saying we
see.
have none, so. this-
Well, then,
We don't have any
then
deed.
we've determined that we have none.
Yeah.
But we need to determine the need,
That's-
not what we have or don't have.
well,
All right,
that's-
it's
so
we do that as a
we're
master
so
plan.
close. Work with SRPC on, and you might not want to again after this. Work with SRPC on the update of the 5-year regional housing needs assessment.
Did we do that?
Who owns
Blair?
that assessment?
Well, you've all received the RHNA file from 2023. I emailed it out, so you
Okay.
have it, but yes, it is done.
So it's
And
in-
you
so it's in
did
here?
work with us on it.
Yes.
So, it's not in here, it's a 200-plus page document, so, you'll have to just look at it online, or on your computer.
I don't recall that
I'll send
size,
it- I'll send
that
it.
size of document.
I'll
but-
send- you know what, it might not have gotten through, it is
Yeah.
possible that I didn't get a bounce back, but you didn't get it.
But maybe
so-
it's in spam, but that's
Yeah,
not
it was-
this.
No,
Okay.
no,
So speaking of keeping things on track, we're at 8 o'clock.
I know, that's why I've accomplished what I wanted to accomplish.
But we need a
We
new
need to
meeting night.
schedule-
Need a new meeting.
Yes.
Date, night.
Night,
Um,
a
There are
regular,
people that emailed in that were here last week or last month that couldn't make it but still want to be a part of it. Other than sending out a global calendar of who's available when,
I know.
I don't know how
How
we're
we
gonna
do that.
accomplish it.
Right, all right, so I have it written down. Give me one second.
Sounded like Wednesdays,
seems
but
like-
not this Wednesday.
It seems like first Wednesday is a no-go for several
like
people.
Wednesdays just
But
stink in general, seems like a lot of
Third
them.
Wednesday of the month it seemed like most of the people with conflicts had conflicts on the first
First.
Wednesday. It
Yes.
seemed like that third Wednesday was
BOS and
potentially
school
open.
board members
I
are
don't know.
third, first and third, and
Are
we
they a
have,
third? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
and we have a BOS member, and Sarah Watton is also an administrator at school, so she probably attends those, so first and third would be out, I believe.
And second and
Planning
fourth.
board has
for the
Wednesday
planning board.
nights.
Second and
And
fourth.
zoning board has Tuesday nights, we don't have a zoning board member here. Oh, yes, we do, sorry, sir.
Got a couple.
Thursdays, 8:00.
Thursdays, I didn't see anyone complain about Thursdays or Mondays.
Thursdays
No,
are,
selectmen meeting.
yeah,
Oh, selectmen, sorry.
Thursdays are
Monday.
challenging for me, they're event
Thursday,
nights.
Friday is not good.
Can we do the in-between Mondays? Is Mondays okay for everybody else? Mondays? If, what do they
Yeah.
meet? They meet first and
The
third?
Conservation Commission meets the first, second Monday
Oh.
of the month, so that leaves 3 other, well.
Do the fourth, I think.
What about
Board
the
of
Tuesdays?
Selectmen.
I thought there were
Yeah, we're no,
some available Tuesdays.
yeah, what did Steve say
Who-
on Tuesdays?
Who said there was meetings on Tuesdays?
ZBA meets Tuesdays, but it's
But it's once a month.
once a month and only as needed, right? So I don't think
we
they,
have to rule out Tuesdays.
what's that?
I don't think we have to rule out Tuesdays. I think
Yeah.
we can accommodate ZBA and meet
Sure.
on Tuesdays.
Yeah,
I have.
Again, I'm not meeting every time.
Right.
I just, it's not in the budget. I'm not trying to
You
be,
mean-
I can send you materials if you ask me for things, like I can be accommodating, but I just can't be attending.
But you're coming next time.
Yes, because we want to get into that outreach plan. And then maybe I take a little break, get some things together, the data will start
If you
slowly
sent
coming in.
out a calendar and asked everyone their available dates, it would take a little time, but then you could pick one that everyone can agree
Well,
to.
we
Well, it's
have
probably
a
quicker right here.
majority of our
right?
group, so let's pick a date and then hopefully others can
Second,
make it.
I
No,
can't
no,
do
no.
first Tuesday, but second Tuesday?
I have board
Take a
meetings
calendar.
second
Oh, yes.
Tuesday.
We
Let-
did so much for Tuesday.
Let the
Third.
group-
But third,
No
fourth
Tuesday?
Tuesday.
Third or fourth Tuesday?
Third
Tuesday.
22nd of
Third
April.
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Ain't the way to do it, folks. You send out a calendar, let everyone check. I can do this first Monday, this second Monday, I can't do third Monday. Then you get it back, and it'll quickly focus on which day that everyone can
But
attend.
then someone takes a week to get the
Yeah.
Yes.
thing back, and now we're,
Hour.
If we're
Well,
all
no, you
here,
you
yeah.
ask for back by a day. If they don't, then,
That's a nightmare.
you
Let's
know, you
pick
give,
April
you give people
22nd.
opportunities, but we only need a week to
Thursday.
get the answer.
Let's pick April 22nd, and then let's pick a second backup alternative date if needs to be, and work from a date.
Was,
well, sorry, what is this backup date? How does that work? So somebody says I can't make it and we all
That's the
change? or-
fourth.
It doesn't. They arrange their schedule. and
That's
they-
that, we're meeting in the same month, and
we
that's
set up
also
a
the,
Zoom, I don't
April
know.
what?
So that's in 3 weeks
yeah,
from now.
that's the same.
April what?
That's okay. April 22nd.
That's the
No.
zoning board.
Yeah, it's the fourth Tuesday of the month. It's not
No.
the third, and it's the same.
Again,
How about the
you pass
29th?
out,
Okay,
So the
you pass
third,
out a monthly schedule, a month.
I want to refine it a little bit. So let's get down to where maybe there's.
Narrow it
Yeah,
I want to
narrow
narrow
it
it
down.
down.
You'll never get
We're all
everyone in.
I think I
You'll
can
be
open with Steve
extremely
and
lucky
Sarah.
to pick a date that everyone.
How about the
can-
5th Tuesday of every month?
I like that one. I'm available that.
There's
I'm
one in
available.
April. There's one in April.
Well, I mean, first off, you can meet, this April 22nd because there is no meeting this month for ZBA.
Yeah, but it doesn't
Steve
solve the
Soruff
problem.
and me would be out, because that's PLIA is the fourth Tuesday.
And
Yeah.
So,
Steve,
I mean,
it's
when you
fine.
send out the map, the month, the calendar, you X off where the PBA, where the zoning boards are meeting and all that. There's certain ones that are left. It's not hard.
I like
I've done
meeting.
it dozens and dozens of times.
I like meeting the fifth one this month, because nobody would have a fifth meeting, right? So then we can establish from there, maybe. That gives us
So
a
the
date, and
fourth-
then everyone can do it.
April's a unique month, it has 5 Tuesdays.
It
The
does.
fourth Tuesday works, it doesn't
I think
conflict.
somebody said that the PLIA meets on the fourth Tuesday, was that right?
The Pawtucket Lake Improvement, Steve
See, that's
Soruff and
fine.
I are
That,
on
that's
it.
too small, we
I
got
know,
out.
sorry. I can skip it, it's
Okay.
fine, but the fifth Tuesday would be fine.
Just bringing
Well,
forward
but that's only
everybody's
one,
conflicts.
one time where there's 5 Tuesdays. That's a unique.
Oh, no, the fifth Tuesday I can meet. The fifth Tuesday's fine.
But then it changes in May.
Yeah.
Yes.
There is no
No.
5th
Yeah.
Tuesday.
Put
Do
out
you
a
meet-
calendar.
Do you meet
It's
monthly?
easy.
We meet monthly. the
They
fourth
can send it to
Tuesday
me
of
and
the
I'll
month.
decipher it, Derek, if you want. It's
All right.
easy.
I've got some guidance. I'll handle it. So we'll do the 22nd. Send out a calendar and a notice that it's the 22nd.
Not the 29th.
What's the date?
So do we think the 29th is better? Because it's the 5th week?
The fifth week.
There is
So
a,
that-
yeah.
There's a fifth
We
week.
can
I
technically
think
do
for
it.
this
Let's-
month, we
let's
should
just-
do it, and then we
For a
should,
one-off, just so we have a higher chance of everybody
being here.
able to
Yeah.
join,
Yeah.
and then we have the discussion together.
That's
But
what
in
I was
addition to having, sending out a calendar too, to get a feel, so that we
Yeah.
can try to do the best to,
29th at 6
accommodate
PM.
everybody.
29th, 6
Do we have
PM.
a second?
3rd.
All in? Aye.
Who's on first?
Yeah, right, exactly.
On my calendar.
Wasn't Steve Swarf on here as well, or was that my imagination?
He's on here, yeah.
He's on here, because he's also on PLIA, that's why I said that.
His issue, he said he doesn't want to meet past 4 PM, so I
Oh,
really just,
ever?
yeah, I
Oh.
just, that's,
Oh, that
Was
will
that?
work.
that was the feedback I got,
I
so I
gotcha.
really can't do much with
No,
that,
okay.
unfortunately.
Okay, 6
I
o'clock
mean,
the 29th.
Honestly, during the day is better for me, but I think it's not gonna get good turnout, so.
Well, this has been very productive. Can we
It
call
has been.
close?
We had good open discussion, you know, but I did get through the things I want to get through. Again, it would have been great to do this a month ago, but, you know, we understand.
Yeah.
So what are we supposed to do between now and the next meeting?
Yeah, what's our homework?
Oh, that's a good question.
I had written down a few other, because you had said like, if you think of any other metrics, like I had a few like thresholds of increase slash decrease of taxes, with, you know, thresholds for population size and the need for additional fire, police, road maintenance, things like that. So should I say that here, or can I email the group and then everyone
You can
decide?
send it to me, and I will look into seeing what we have that could match what you're looking for. I don't know, I'll have it one for one, but I'll ask.
Can I inquire, when you say thresholds, for taxes for one, that was the first thing, what do you mean by that? What, a threshold, like, what is gonna make the taxes go up or make the taxes go down?
Yeah, like the mix matrix of residential, commercial, open space, you know, for housing, how many housing units and population threshold usually leads to higher taxes, or what's the threshold for when you have to start implementing more fire, police, vehicles?
So there's two items here.
Yeah,
Because don't you think that, like, our police and fire, like, if you asked them, what are you gonna need? What are you envisioning in 5 years? Like, they're gonna know that, because
Yeah.
it's like really their
and for
house.
housing, like, yeah, housing stock, affordability, demographics, all that, but then also, I guess I'm getting at, like, services.
I mean, you just have to understand, it's not a one-for-one correlation, because one thing somebody that would, like a pro-housing person would say, yeah, but if your housing stock is younger, they have, you know, modern fire breaks, they have fire suppression systems, so the response times and the response needs are less. So I've heard people, you know, inquire about this. I don't have that one-for-one, because I think it's gonna come from a variety of metrics, kind of like what you were alluding to earlier about sort of the healthy land kind of component. It's not going to be a single metric, it'll be like, and then people kind of wrestle over the data is really where that's going to be. So send me the question and I will inquire about what we have, or any studies that have been done that are out there. Nothing's going to be specific to Nottingham, but it could be like a broader universe. And I could share that with the group.
Yeah.
So
Like,
things
there
like
must
that.
be like there is that tipping point that was identified of, once you get to 10,000, you can't carry well and septic anymore, so you need municipal water treatment and things like that. So I guess those are kind of thresholds that I'm interested in.
Yeah, I mean, again, that would be a study unto itself, and I don't know if I have that for this community. I'll have to see if there's any sort of general things. I think you said that, or somebody said that 10,000 came from somewhere, right?
Last
I've
master
read
plan.
9,000 something, right?
Yeah.
But that-
Does it not have to do with the geography or the size
No,
of
it
the
had to
town?
do with if, I think it had like
Soils
2 acre
will-
minimums, how many lots, how many houses could be in this town? Because the rest was wetland, roads, whatever. So, conservation land,
So
so.
that-
I've read that too.
That information, I think, would be really valuable
Hmm.
to guide us.
I don't remember where I read it though.
Yeah.
If you remember.
Yeah, where did it come?
I remember reading it in the last master plan, like, it was in one of the town reports when we first moved in, I
Maybe
guess.
that's okay.
So,
Okay.
Do you
um,
have?
If you can share it with me, I will look around.
yeah.
I've got a note.
There must be like on these types of aquifers with this type of soil, with having everyone on well and septic, this, you know,
Well, yeah, but I mean,
threshold is this
so like the state,
lower, yeah.
the town established 2-acre minimum. The state has minimums based on soils. So under these soils, you can have lots down to 5,000 square feet because the soils percolate at that rate. But at these soils, you can only have 2-acre lots. The town has just chosen to have 2-acre minimums. So there is,
I mean the carrying
Information.
capacity before you have to switch to town sewer and water.
yeah, I mean,
It's gotta depend on the
It's gonna-
topography
Right.
and the geology of the.
I think that should
land.
drive, because like we should know if we're gonna promote or drive this many housing units, then in 10 years, we're gonna have to have a wastewater treatment plant.
I think to get to that answer of a number is not something that could be a part of this scope. But I can try to find what's out there.
But the 5,
That's-
10, 20 says that it should be.
Right.
Part of the scope, really.
That could be a survey, like, are you willing to, or would you be interested in funding a wastewater treatment plan, or, you know, really? Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, a lot of, yeah. I'm not gonna have that information to be able to give to you, like say, yep, there you go, it's 9,472. That's just not gonna exist. Not in this scope, and I think to do that would be, I mean, you'd have to do soil surveys.
but why don't towns do that if they're planning for that many
The
people or
intensity of that
developments?
type of data collection would require so much field work.
So they're just like accepting or like promoting all of that without knowing if they're gonna need that?
Well, the earth can withstand a lot, I mean,
Oh,
you know,
yeah,
you know.
So,
Tipping point.
so I-
yeah.
I'd like to comment on that, a couple things. One, in the,
I think we're past the tipping point, so we might disagree.
in the town report, the police do, and the fire and the ambulance do report how many cases and calls of different natures that they've had. I did in fact talk with 2 police officers just a couple days ago, just here at the town offices, and we talked at length. And I think somewhere along the way, as a committee, we should call them in and say, help us understand
Yeah,
how
what's
busy you are and what's going on.
demand?
So the police officer said, we have 2 ambulances, just in case one breaks or something happens. And he goes, we had this many calls, it's specifically listed in there. And we had this many calls, and these guys are like the Maytag repairmen, is kind of what they inferred. That they don't have the capacity, they'd love to have more things to do than sitting around, you know, shining the ambulances. That's the impression I got, but that's my impression only, and, you know, everybody, they should come in here and we should all fire questions away as try to, a discovery of, you know, where do our services drop off to a level that people won't tolerate anymore? So a town is like a business. A town is a business. They provide services to the residents, whether it's plowing, police, fire, ambulance, schooling, and they collect money. And just like if you had your own business, you have a certain cost of your business to run, and you have to generate income. The town's option to generate income is called raise taxes. So there is a certain level of services that the town has to provide as a business, and a certain level of income that needs to pay for those. And if inflation simply goes up, then the taxes are gonna go up. And there's ways, the taxes are very, you could calculate how much taxes need, how many houses need to be to keep the taxes the same, very easily.
That's not the.
Do you have
that ratio is
milestones
not
for
apples
us?
to
So,
apples.
In other words,
yeah,
we
let's,
should
let's try and wrap up the
sending
meeting.
a survey
It's getting late.
in month 3.
So I think
back
if
in
we,
month 4.
and to answer that question
and,
specifically,
Some,
we can public outreach to our own community,
we can
our own
focus on-
services. So that might be a survey that we want to
Putting a
send
task.
internal to
And
our
we're-
Well, we
government.
have a
What
basic-
is this?
it's a
Is
basic-
this in
it's a
here?
big- basic Gantt chart. you
We-
know?
Yeah, yeah.
You
Is that
good?
in
Sorry.
here?
Are we all set?
I wrote down a few things you had just brought up, and then I just wanted to know if there's anything else anybody else wants me to look into. And someone had asked about homework assignments. It was to think about the data list and questions that you want to ask on the survey. So just think about it. If it's a really good one, feel free to send it to me, but I'm gonna send you all something.
But you should have a deadline of when these data sets question, right? So, not your deadline, but our deadline.
To
'Cause
ask
You
you.
said that they were gonna run it at,
Yeah, I mean,
so give us a week.
we've got, on data, we have a few weeks. It got put up to the front of this because people were talking about it, but that wasn't something I was gonna talk about for like another month.
All right.
It's the outreach and engagement piece that I have to focus on right now. So if you want to focus on something, focus on survey questions.
Okay.
And if you want to start to familiarize yourself with community workshops, and want to say, okay, if we do a community workshop, I'd really like for us to have this conversation with people. We'll probably have about anywhere between 4 and 6 conversations, like stations. You can start to think about that
And you're gonna
too.
give us examples of what other towns have done.
Yes,
Yeah,
can you
yeah.
share that?
Yeah, yep, I will do that.
Okay,
So yeah, just be thinking about that, but survey questions first.
and then
We
with
can
that,
get that out, because it takes a while to create that, promote it, get it out, get the responses back, and then in the meantime, we'll be moving along with data and workshops
Do
and
we
stuff.
wanna,
with that schedule.
do we wanna discuss a flow of data, how this works? Does it all go to Blair?
Yes.
And then Blair sends it out to us, or does it go between anybody here, or
Blair's our
Send it-
data clearinghouse.
Yeah, just send it to me.
check?
Let me see.
Where you're gonna get all of our emails?
So is our goal then, next time, to have provided you with enough questions that we look them over and come up with a survey at the next meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
So for the next meeting, what I'm gonna do is take whatever you send me. At the next meeting, we're gonna look at a survey and we're gonna make a decision. We're gonna decide on what that survey looks like. Yeah.
Well,
So send me your examples over the next week or two.
And you'll put together a survey
Yes.
that we will look at?
Yeah.
Okay,
And we'll have more questions than we're gonna end up with, and we're gonna shrink it down to the one we like.
right, because too many questions, they won't do it.
Exactly, yes.
So
But-
with this housing academy, we did discuss this, and some of the people that UNH Extension Cooperative, or whatever they're called, we have a gentleman right here in town that works and taught some of these housing academy things, and they said, hey, if you need a survey for another town or some other resource, we can get it. So I'll reach out and grab
thank
a
you.
couple, maybe send them to Blair, or he can pull them up, and then he can send them back from what other communities have already done, and then.
So, in your inbox, Alana forwarded you an email that came from a Grace Warwick, and it was sent today. So Grace works with Invest New Hampshire, who oversees the HOP grant program, and she said, we need community outreach engagement plans, strategies from all of you. Here are examples, here are things to reference. So you can start by looking at all of that. And it kind of answers a lot of the questions you're asking me, but I'm still gonna send you stuff that we at SRPC have done, that I can speak to personally, or talk to the person who did it, but
So that email comes from her, it doesn't come from you?
that particular one, because it just came today, and I was not in the office most
It's
of the
printed
day.
on the table, I think. if
Is
you
it?
picked up. Yeah,
Oh, you're right, it
it
is.
is. It's printed on
Did you
table.
did everybody get the last?
I don't think I got it in an email, but it's printed on the
I
table.
was trying to figure that out, what was
I
it?
got it.
I'm sorry, I totally missed this, I wasn't,
Yeah,
yeah, so this is the one that came out, it says Community Engagement Plan at the top,
yeah.
from Grace Warwick. So have a look at this, this is what I'm talking about. I'm sorry, I didn't even see this here, 'cause it just came today.
Is that, are they like packages? I was trying to figure that out, they were kind of scattered.
Yeah, she was just, it was multiple printouts.
Close to the blue cover.
It's whatever order you put it in, but it's part, it's right here. Okay.
She did yoga in her house.
Oh, yeah,
help.
okay.
Help you out.
Beth Tenner.
Motion to adjourn?
Yeah, that's where we're at. Thank you, everybody.